All right, let's check this video out. We need to talk about the first Descendant. I have played a little bit of this game. We're going to play some more of this, actually. And I have actually enjoyed it. I see where it falls short in some areas. But I actually kind of like the game. Let's check it out. Force Gaming. We need to talk about the first Descendant and see what he's got to say.
Look, on paper, the first Descendant should very much be a game that I love. It is a looter shooter with a variety of PvE. You got horde mode missions, dungeons, and boss battles, just to name a few. We're grinding for gear. We got cool characters to customize via this mod system. We got the shared open world spaces with other people running around. I mean, this checks a lot of boxes for me. It's very similar to games that I've sunk a load of time into, including the obvious ones like Warframe, Destiny, and Division, but also I've enjoyed some of the less popular.
So that's what I've been comparing to it the most, is Division and Destiny. I haven't heard other people really mention that, like just comparing it to Warframe and Destiny. I haven't played much of Warframe, so I can't really make that comparison, but it definitely does kind of feel like the Division mixed with Destiny, especially how the quest systems work and the shared world as you're going around. That's just like Destiny, really. But yeah, the gameplay's tight though, in terms of combat, and the enemies are kind of cool looking, a little bit samey, but the bosses are pretty dope.
Popular games people think are bad, like Defiance, Firefall, and Outriders. And I was hoping.
That's it. That's the game I was saying it was like as well, Outriders. That totally flopped. That game was a bit shit, really.
Really, that the first Descendant would be another one of those games just to add to my list. But after playing a bunch between the pre-release beta test and now for a few days post-launch, I gotta say, it's just not hitting the mark.
It's fair. I think sometimes with these sort of games, though, playing a good chunk of closed beta tests really can jade you to the launch. That's why games I'm looking forward to, especially games where you're going to end up repeating a bunch of combat or content that's obviously the same. I don't like to dabble with the tests too much, unless a test like a vertical slice later on in the game. You know, it's not something that I'm doing straight away. So I've spent 20 hours doing this, the game launches, and then the next 20 hours I've already done. I think it kind of takes away the shine of the launch.
I don't love it. I don't hate it either. Well, I do hate parts of it, which we'll get to, but I also think it does a few things quite well, and that's why I'm not surprised there are a lot.
I think that's the thing with this game, though. It's just all right, really. It's nothing spectacular. I don't think it's bad. It's just okay. Middle of the road, you know? It's safe. I wouldn't call it mediocre, but, you know?
A lot of people enjoying this game. For starters, like, the gameplay generally feels really good.
Yeah, man, it's
this
tight.
notoriously can be difficult for third-person shooters.
And there's some fucking sexy waifus in the game as well.
They tend to lack that sense of,
especially with those maid outfits, like, jeez,
impact compared to a lot of first-person shooting games. It's not perfect, no, but I would say that shooting and using abilities is pretty snappy and fairly well done. In fact, I think the highest praise that I would give this game, the best thing that it does, is in fact the gameplay feeling good, and that's a big deal. And on a similar note, I think the movement is well done too. At a baseline, every single class has the ability to sprint, double jump, mantle terrain, and then use a
the grapple's quite nice as well, actually. Feels fluid, feels tight, it's responsive.
Grappling hook. The big thing with this game, though, is the fact that it accounts for and carries over momentum. So when you're using your grapple hook, like, you can really fly around the environment. Starting from a sprint, you can jump and then hook onto like any part of the terrain or objects. And then while you're flying towards your target, you've got this horizontal control that lets you slightly move left or right. This allows you to basically launch yourself around the side of your target, carrying that momentum with you. And then you follow that up with a second grapple hook some distance away. I mean, you can really just be flying all over the place. It's just a lot of fun to use, especially when that is coupled with a Descendant who already has built-in mobility, like any leaps or any move speed enhancement. It can just be a whole heck of a lot of fun sprinting and swinging around. Another thing that
one thing about this, though, I think even though there's some sexy looking characters, you know, they're quite generic, you know? Like, even the Titan dude at the start looks like a dude straight from Destiny, really. And the other two kind of just look like typical Korean designed characters in a video game.
That I've enjoyed is the class design. Like, yes, there are some pretty generic characters. Like, you got the basic shooter dude bro, you got the turret guy, you got the one dude who tosses out grenades, you got Elsa, but then there's characters like Bunny. Now, she's been getting a lot of attention for reasons other than her playstyle, but genuinely, I think she's like one of the coolest design classes that I've played in a looter shooter. I'm being serious here. The class is built around the concept of charging up this electric meter and then using it to deal massive area of effect damage. So as you run, you store up this built electricity, and then your various abilities will deal increased damage based on your charge level. So this includes things like lightning emission, which will pulsate AoE damage for every 7 meters you move.
Why does this video look so muddy? I don't understand why. Is it taken from a stream? This looks muddy. It's on the VP09 codec. It's at 1440p, but it's very muddy.
Or Thrill Bomb, where you can get an extra burst of AoE damage on call. And then on top of that, after landing from a double jump, you also deal additional AoE damage. And then you couple those mechanics with the Speed of Light ability, which increases your run speed 50%. And the faster you run, the quicker you build up electricity. And then the more frequently you're pulsating those every 7 meter AoE explosions. It's just crazy, dude. You can also couple this with the grapple hook. And for every 7 meters you move while grappling, you will also pulsate additional damage. The end result, like playing this character when all the pieces come together, is you're running around constantly at 150% move speed, then grapple hooking all over the place to get additional bursts of AoE damage every 7 meters you ever move, and then pulsating additional AoE damage on top of that, all while double jumping, because whenever you land, you do more AoE damage. And it's just crazy. Like, it's a real lot of fun, interesting class design. Then we've got the boss fights that are known as...
The other classes, though, are quite generic. Like, you know, when you get your choice at the start between the 3 characters, usually I'm like, oh, that character looks cool, and I want that one. That one's for me. I didn't find that with any of them. I looked at all their abilities and I was like, I don't think I want any of those guys. They all look kind of boring. So I ended up going with the ice chick because I thought she's a little bit more offensive, and she's a debuff, and I thought that sounded kind of okay out of the 3. I don't know if I maybe should have gone with the grenade dude, because when I was running around, I ended up going into a mission with somebody else who was using that. I was like, that looks kind of cool, actually. But the way they displayed it at the start looked really, really just not fun. And I'm not really a defensive kind of player, so I didn't want the shield dude. He looked the best of the 3, but again, still really generic. But I think they did a bad job at like making you excited about the character you choose at the start.
Void intercept battles. These I have found varied and interesting. Outside of the fact that every one of them take place in this like single digital arena, I actually thought overall these boss encounters are really good. Interesting mechanics with multiple phases. Even the first couple of boss fights, because you unlock them as you level up. The first few ones can be quite challenging, and it just gets even harder.
I feel like they're mechanically decent. They look great as well. Like, some of these bosses actually look pretty fucking cool, man.
From there, they look cool, they're well animated, and some of them, especially later on, actually really require coordination and effort with your group. I also like the world and environments. It kind of reminds me a bit of Anthem or Skyforge, if you ever played that heap. Another bad game that I enjoyed. Lots of cool looking like ancient structures and ruins. They got the sci-fi twist all throughout, and they're in these varied settings and locations. You've got like mountainous regions with the European inspired architecture.
One of the issues that I've got though with the open world, unless you're actually engaged in combat, you know, doing a mission or something, traversing the world's kind of dead, man. You know, it's just lifeless. It's just kind of whack.
Deserts with lots of craggy rocks and metallic industrial buildings. Foggy forests that remind me a lot of like the Pacific Northwest area.
Looks great. It just doesn't feel alive at all. Kind of just makes it feel empty and boring.
Area of the US. I mean, all around, it's a cool play space. There's cool structures, a cool setting, maybe a tad generic feeling at times, but overall, I enjoyed moving around this world. Top of that too, I think the graphics are pretty solid. Like the launch update, I think it looks good. The game ran really well for me. And then just finally, like I do like the general structure of the game, right? So you got those shared open world spaces. I've always been a fan of this, running around, fighting enemies, doing quests, and then just having random people show up and all of a sudden you're working together to complete.
I admit I do like that as well. I am quite an antisocial gamer sometimes, but it's nice that you can choose to go into certain instances privately, but then there's ones that you can just be doing, and you know, all of a sudden there's a dude with you and you're running it together. I like that.
this one objective. It's a lot of fun. You go around the world from one quest marker to another, you then clear the zone, and then at the end you basically get what is a dungeon run. You finish that, you move on to the next zone, and that's the progress through this game, interwoven with some story. On top of that, you can...
The story's kind of whack though. It's very tropey and just kind of not intriguing at all, really.
You avoid intercept battles in between. They're actually required as you progress, as well as things like special operation missions for grinding resources and materials. And then you're also working on your character. You're equipping new weapons when they come up. You're playing with your mods, tinkering your build via that system, enhancing it through other means. And hey, if you like grindy loot games, this is a grindy loot game. There's a lot of different things to grind, especially those 1 to 3%.
I feel like there's a lack of visual identity between the early weapons as well. You know, there's a couple that look different and, you know, weapons within the same grouping, like whatever, an assault rifle, shotgun, or whatever. They've got a slight visual change. But I think a lot of that stuff's in the skins, isn't it? Which is a shame because I think when you're playing something like this, you want a massive variety in aesthetics and visuals and skins and frames to weapons for free. I get it, the game's free, but I think to keep you in that, you know, enjoying the loot, it's not just about stats, it's about how cool they look as well.
% drop chance items you need to unlock certain descendants and weapons, but that's another story which we will get to here in a second. But yeah, as I said, there's plenty I think this game does well. I should enjoy the first Descendant. This video should be, dude, I'm hyped. This game's awesome. I love it. But I don't. And there's a few reasons why. For starters, many of the issues that I had back in early beta tests have persisted through launch. And I'm not just gonna complain here, I will provide feedback as we move throughout as well. So there's some smaller things. Like for one, there's just a lot of rough edges around this game. Things like animation, sound effects, even like the ambient noise. None of this struck me as particularly good. I think this stuff, yeah, it's just a little rough. Also the dialogue, I mean, this is just flat out bad. Like it's not, the VO, the dialogue is not good. Also pretty sure it's not synced up with mouth movement unless I was having a stroke the entire time I was playing this game. Also, the game feels kind of stiff across the board. It's a little harder to pin this one down. I can't really find the exact words, but I would just say something about the way like the characters and enemies move, NPC animations. There's like a lack of...
Also, I think it might be the main character animations as well. Obviously, I've only played what is his name? What's her name now? Viessa or some shit. She seems a little bit stiff in the way she moves, but I don't know, man, the combat, it feels tight, but at the same time, I can kind of see where he's coming from. I don't know if it's more of a visual thing that's affecting that feel or what, because it actually feels quite tight and fluid. But I think I get where he's coming from at the same time as well.
Natural feel to it all, just not fluid enough, maybe just not enough to those animations, not enough
I think it's the animations.
Is that a word for it? I don't know,
yeah,
but is any of this game breaking? No, not really, but again, it is what I would call rough around the edges. Simple fix here, just continue polishing the game, work on this stuff, improve it as time goes on with patches, easy, right? The biggest hangups for me though, I don't know if they're going to address these, but maybe we'll see. Okay, so the open world, it still feels lifeless. This was the case.
Just said that. It's dead as fuck.
In the beta, people told me it was addressed and they fixed it. I've not really seen that in the past 3 days while...
Didn't play the beta, but straight away, I said that when we started playing the game right off the bat, that this world's fucking dead, bro.
Playing. Fact is, if you or someone in the instance of the zone that you're in hasn't started a quest, there's just absolutely nothing happening in these open zones. There's nothing going on. You're not seeing roaming packs of NPCs, not even static groups taking hold in locations. There's no dynamic events occurring, no puzzles to solve. There's no wildlife running around, those little flourishes that really add to a game feeling alive and full. Literally nothing is happening on these maps. It's all just flat, dead landscape. And I don't mean flat like technically flat. I just mean like it's like flatlined. It just feels dead unless someone has started a quest. The world only populates with objectives, and
it'll be one of them as well. As the player base maybe goes down, which it will, the less other players that are running around, it's going to exacerbate it even more, because when you're not doing something at that immediate point, obviously there's nothing going on for you, but if there's other people kind of getting involved with something, there's stuff going on, so that kind of makes it feel a little bit alive. But yeah, man, the world it feels barren, man.
enemies with events if you, or like I said, another player in your instance, if someone starts a mission at those static markers, that then will spawn in specific enemies and objectives for a mission. Whereas, for example, take a look at Destiny. This game gets compared to that a lot. Whenever you go into a zone in Destiny, the entire zone is full of activity from the start.
Yeah,
things are happening. NPCs are holding up locations. There are packs roaming around. You got public events constantly going off. And then if a player starts
what's up, Renegade?
The mission equivalent in Destiny. If a player starts a patrol in Destiny, that then adds another layer on top of what already feels like a vibrant, lived-in world. Recommendation for the first Descendant: populate the world. Fill it with stuff beyond what happens when someone begins.
Yeah, they need to do that. Because he does, it's just super bland. I think even the, I was talking about this in stream, but some people were saying that they kind of liked it. You know, the little hub area? I forgot what it's called. Albion, is it? Basically the tower. It's kind of boring as well. I'm not a fan of the layout. I hate it when you have hubs in these sort of games. And I suppose once you've been playing it a little bit, and maybe I'm just stupid, it just felt like kind of complicated to find, like, not so much complicated to find your way around, but like, and this is obviously I just started playing, but I was like, I checked the map and I'm like, oh, I've got to go down through here and up through there kind of thing, where it's like, if you're going to give me a hub world, just kind of make it easy to access all the stuff. I don't mind it being open and kind of simplistic in that sense, but the color palette as well on that area was just shit. It was just like cream gray sort of boring color. Wasn't a fan of it.
Begins a mission. Also, I would say visually, I thought the play space in the world feels a bit sparse, and specifically I'm talking about the amount and the density of things in the environment, things like foliage and trees and buildings. It just all feels a little light, and also the scaling's a little weird. It kind of makes the game feel a little dated, despite the fact that it does graphically look pretty good. Recommendation here, fill the play space so it feels less like a diorama and more like a living video game world that we're moving through. My second major problem with the game right now has been the quest design is just...
That's sometimes the problem that a lot of open world games have, don't they? They go down the bigger is better. Not saying that that's exactly what's going on here. It's slightly different design philosophy. But you have a world that's large and they think, well, the bigger it is, the more stuff you've got to do. But it ends up spreading out that content and kind of makes it not feel so fun. Where sometimes, you know, a little bit smaller, condensed, deeper world is a little bit better to be in, isn't it? To enjoy, to explore. You know, you might not have such massive distances and be out, because that's one thing that you see less of now, don't you? Do you remember the times when games would always be like, oh, our map's so many kilometers? That was like the thing, wasn't it? But we started to figure out a lot of the games that did that, it was just a lot of empty space and a lot of nothing in between points of interest. Where like now it seems that people understand that maybe a little bit of a smaller world that's a bit more densely populated with things to do and a bit more interesting on the eyes as well and looks more natural is definitely better to be in.
Straight up boring. I'm really specifically honing in on the pacing here. So as you play through the game, like I mentioned, you're moving through zones, going from one quest marker to another. You complete them all, you do a little dungeon, and then you move on to the next zone. Maybe you got to go back to town, but that's the general flow. Every quest you do, no matter the zone that you're in, it's all like the same four things. They're either saying kill things, defend a location, collect stuff and bring it back, or capture a location, static.
Yeah, that's the problem with these sort of games though as well, man. That's how they can become incredibly repetitive if everything's a bit samey. And then even adding on to the fact that the environment being kind of generic and boring, it all starts to compound on itself then, doesn't it?
Or moving. Every single quest in the game, in every single zone, boils down to these four things. Now, this is pretty standard stuff, right? This isn't unique to the first Descendant. Most MMOs, most looter shooters, quests boil down to those four basic things. My biggest issue...
It's how you implement it, though, and how you pace that content out as well. And, again, the environment you're in, that can make a massive difference.
Is the pacing is very, very bad. It's too slow. While you're playing, for starters, everything dies incredibly fast as you're going through that initial progression. This changes as you move into the harder modes and as you play higher level, like the horde mode missions. Things aren't dying very quickly, but as you're going through the zones, there's just so much downtime. You're killing things instantly, and there's so much downtime between.
Yeah, I agree with that. Even on some of the early missions, because you have like a wave of enemies coming, you know, a couple of waves coming in, and a couple of times on some of the early missions, I'd kill a wave, and I was like, Have I finished the quest here? I'm not seeing any pointers coming up on the map or on my screen to say, go here. But it was like 15 seconds or so, and then the next wave came in. It was like, okay, that was a bit jarring. I felt weird. I almost felt like I'd finished the quest, but I hadn't. And then the next wave spawned in, and that is not good at all. That's not fun.
Between respawns, between timers counting down, between things moving, the result of which frankly was just unengaging and a lot of time just standing around feeling pretty bored because there wasn't anything to do. We were just waiting for a timer to tick down. A group of enemies would show up, we would one-shot them like in less than 5 seconds, and then we would be standing there waiting another 20 or 30 seconds for respawns. So my recommendation here would be to up the pacing of enemy spawns.
That's something that can be done easily as well, isn't it?
I think that would go a long way. You don't even have to make like enemies way harder while you were leveling up. I understand like leveling is face roll in a lot of games, right? That's part of the process. The hard part doesn't come to end game. If you want to keep a face roll, fine, but like increase the density of monsters or the frequency of spawns or something. So
again, though, I think this game's suffering from the same problem that a lot of MMOs and even some looter shooters suffer from. And even what we were talking about with Zenless Zone Zero as well. Of course, these sort of games, the meat and potatoes, so to speak, is in that end game, isn't it? Is in that loop at the end. But that can't be the only content that's enjoyable or the only content that really pulls you in, because no one's going to get to that point. You know, it's like when you hit, like I said, you hear people say, oh, just wait till you get to the end game, bro. That's what it's all about. It's like, well, I don't want to fucking get to the end game if the rest of it's shit. And I don't want to wait 100 hours to start having fun, or 20 or 30 hours to start having fun. It's just like, that's just bullshit. It's like, you know, the game needs to pull you in and be paced right, and the difficulty curve needs to be right off the get-go. Because it's a game's job to get engager. It's not your job to engage with content that's kind of boring.
So that we're just spending less time just like standing there, just staring around in space. Like it just really made it unengaging. And along those same lines, the boss design everywhere outside of those void intercept battles, which I think are good, the boss design everywhere else is really bad. I'd like it to introduce you to the first Descendant's boss design philosophy. We call it the 3 orbs philosophy. Take any boss, doesn't matter what its faction is.
Yeah, I must admit, I wasn't a fan of that in that first fight. And the fact that it's reused in multiple different enemies as well is kind of whack. You know, even with these little sub-bosses, I understand they're not the big bosses and they differ. But if you're going to have different enemies, they should have different mechanics, you know? They definitely should have different mechanics, different adds, different systems that engage you in a different way. Otherwise, you're facing the same boss, basically, with a different skin, aren't you, really?
Is how it looks, what sort of weapons or skill it has. Take that boss, break its health bar into 3 to 4 sections, and then make them invulnerable every time players break through one of those sections until they destroy the 3 floating orbs. Either destroy them outright, or destroy them in a particular order, or destroy them all at the same time. 3 orbs, invulnerable boss, kill those orbs, done. 90% of the boss encounters in the game. Like, yeah. I couldn't.
That format's boring, really. You know, once in a while, fine, cool. But when it becomes, you know, the majority of that sort of content, it's like, yeah, it's whack, man. Game needs improvements. Issue is its next on. Yep.
Believe it. After like my 100th boss of seeing this exact mechanic, I was like, you gotta be kidding me. Just make the, 3 orbs. That was their design philosophy. It's outside the void.
What are we doing here as well with this sort of design as well? That's one thing with free-to-play games. Of course, they have the FOMO and they want to engage you to buy stuff. But it's like, haven't they figured this out yet? You know, I know it's a different genre, but it's a similar sort of systems they're trying to get you to do with things like Genshin and Honkai Star Rail. But if you create an engaging game, which means building lots of systems, you're going to make a lot of money just off that, because people are going to want to buy into it then. They're going to want to buy the characters. They're going to want to buy skins. They're going to want to have all the extras because they're engaged. When you create these sort of mechanics, it just kind of slaps of being fucking lazy, and you're never going to get people to, well, you're going to get some people, but you're never going to get that explosion of people buying into the systems and into the world, are you?
step battles, because those are really, really cool. My next big thing, and this is a real sticking point here, is that just so blatantly obvious, and this is the case in a lot of grind games, but it feels especially so here. Progression is just clearly artificially stretched out to try to push us towards the cash shop. There's no doubt here with the things like the 24-hour build timers. Gee, I would like to skip those. Oh, I can buy doing that? Great. Or the fact that you've got those a lot of those enhancement materials that you really need for progression, the activators and exchangers.
It's the most mobile way to do it as well, isn't it? That, you know, that thing of like, hey, this thing you're getting, you're going to have to wait till you get it, but you can buy to get it right now. You know, especially being so blatantly obvious if you're literally building something, you know, it's so mobile-y, if that's even a word. But, you know, it's, and I'm okay with freaking microtransactions. Christ, I play fucking Honkai Star Rail, Wuthering Waves, and, you know, I'll play gacha games, so I'm a degenerate, you know? So I'm quite easy on monetized systems in games, but yeah, those sort of systems in this kind of game, which is blatantly not a mobile game really, it kind of just, it's not a good way to try and monetize the game at all. And I don't even think it's going to be a way that makes people want to spend money. It doesn't generate good FOMO, in my opinion.
And more, or you got the 1 to 3% drop rates when trying to farm the materials needed for this stuff, which can take players, I don't know, I've seen people saying like upwards of 100 or so hours. I don't have a lot of feedback for this part of the thing, this artificial inflation of progression pushing you towards the monetization. Don't really have feedback here because, let's be honest, this is all done on purpose. This is the repetitive nature of especially free-to-play games, especially free-to-play MMO lights or MMOs. Games are made worse to sell you the solution, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that's when monetization in free-to-play games is done poorly. I know a lot of people get mad that there can be egregious microtransactions in free games anyway, or even an average amount of microtransactions. But at the end of the day, you're getting a product for free. I genuinely have no issues with even quite aggressive monetization in a game. It's how it's applied to the gameplay loop. Does it make the gameplay loop worse? Then it's a shit system. Is it just something that's creating FOMO or is going to add to your gameplay loop? And then I think it's a fine system, you know? Like games like Genshin and Honkai, you could say that without getting certain things or certain characters in the game, you're losing out on things, which is true, but you can grind to get those things, which I think is fine, because of course a free-to-play game is going to try and nudge you in the way of spending money, and I think that's totally fair. But it's how it's done. You know, it's the curve that it's done at, isn't it? Whether it's pushed hard and they add systems in that are just really making the game not enjoyable, and then they're like, hey, we can fuck them off if you want, you know, give us a bit of moolah and we'll make it better. That makes me not want to give companies money. If I'm having fun and then there's these cool little things that are like, oh, dude, this could actually make the game even more fun, or that's cool, I want to do that and I want this character. That's what makes me want to spend money. And I'm totally fine with that. Because at the end of the day, I've always said, I look at games. If I get 20 plus, 30 plus hours out of a game and it's been free, then that's been an incredible investment. And I don't mind spending a bit of cash then. Doesn't mean I always will. But if there's systems that are cool or things that are really cool to grab, I'll happily buy them. Because I know a lot of the time people get mad when they don't get 100 hours out of a game that they're paying for. Where for me, you go out on a Friday night, you go out for some food with your partner, you know, I'll go out with Rosie, we'll spend 50 quid on a meal and 2 drinks. So if I can buy a game that gives me 100 hours worth of gameplay, I'm happy. And if I can get a free-to-play game that'll give me 40 to 50 hours worth of gameplay before I even spend a penny, I think that's a fucking good deal, man. But it's when the systems are there from the start and they make the game lesser, that's when they're shit systems.
You've heard that time and time again, that is absolutely the case here. And that leads me to the final thing that I want to talk about, monetization. Now, I'm not going to run through all of the numbers. Plenty of people have already done that. Let me just put it this way. It's like they took inspiration from Warframe. You hear people saying, it's just like Warframe, it's just like Warframe.
I can't really say too much on that because I only played a tiny bit of Warframe, so I haven't even interacted with the microtransaction system on the game.
No, it's like they took the inspiration from Warframe in terms of how they're monetizing the different aspects of the customization and progression. Like, yes, there are a lot of similarities, direct parallels you can draw between Warframe and the first Descendant, but it's like they said, okay,
maybe I haven't found the good ones in this game, but I swear the hand cannons are all trash.
We'll take that baseline. How can we make this worse while simultaneously making more money?
That sounds
That
like
right
Nexon.
there pretty much covers exactly how they've monetized this game. Here's some examples.
That straight up sounds just like Nexon.
Right? Buying Descendants requires you purchasing 2 bundles of premium currency because the Descendants cost slightly more than what a single bundle of premium currency gives.
Yeah, this is the typical thing now. I do hate that, where it's just a bit more than the bundle, so we end up having to buy 2 bundles, or that bundle and a cheaper bundle, and then you're left with a few spare coins, so you're like, well, I may as well try and use these, and then the items that you want to get might be a little bit more again, so you're like, well, do I buy? And it creates a system where you're always, you know, you've got that little bit of change there. It is predatory, but I think most free-to-play games really do have predatory systems. Going back to like gacha games, things like Wuthering Waves, Honkai Star Rail, they are incredibly predatory, but they're done in a way that's, I feel like it's not so bad and it doesn't affect the enjoyment of the game as well. But yeah, this
is a tried and true anti-consumer premium currency conversion tactic. You sell bundles that reward
it's not
barely
great.
less than what it is you know people are gonna want to buy. It's scummy, it's always scummy, it's scummy here as well. Or you got the armor dyes that are single use. Like at least in Warframe, when you purchase a color palette, you can use it as much as you like, whenever, however.
Yeah, if you're purchasing, there should be multiple uses, or you just get in, you can use it as much as you want.
Many frames you're trying to customize, whatever parts of it you want to customize. But in this game, you buy 1 die, you customize 1 part, the die is gone. You lost it. The paint can ran out just like that. Then there's just the fact that
yeah, I hate that system. That's trash.
Aspects of the grind itself put even Warframe to shame, at least for certain things. And I think the big one that a lot of people you've seen pointing out is the fact that ultimate characters require you to farm missions with 3% drop reward chances for the part that you want in order.
Is that what the drop rate is?
For you to even be able to make that ultimate character. If you're not familiar with Warframe or the First Descendant, both games have versions of the characters, the playable classes, that are just like, there's the base version and then the ultimate version, which is just a better iteration of that, right? So people want the ultimate one because it's the base one, but just better, flat out. If you're trying to farm that for free, you're looking at repeating missions.
See, like these sort of systems in games, for me, people hate on gacha systems in games, and I get it because they're like, it's an element of gambling. It gives people that sort of like, you know, and people can spend ridiculous amounts. But I kind of prefer it than these systems, because these systems are just less fun. They're just less fun, man.
Missions over and over again with as low as a 3% drop rate. That's very low. Let me just tell you, that's very low. Or there's
low.
The doubling your mod capacity, and this is one of the biggest sources of power in both games, in Warframe and in the First Descendant. However, in First Descendant, the equivalent of the Warframe version, it's 20 times more expensive. Real world money only, by the way, for doing this. That's the only way you can double your mod capacity. Also, one big note and omission that hasn't been included in a lot of this conversation is the fact that Warframe allows for trading, so you can get these things that cost premium currency in Warframe by trading with other players. No such thing exists in the First Descendant. People will often reference the fact that Nexon has promised they will eventually look at possibly adding trading in the future. Shouldn't exactly be completely putting our trust in Nexon for a reason we'll get to right here. In general, the game's monetization model revolves around having,
because it's Nexon,
like I said, really long grinds for stuff that you are likely to want, and then selling you the means of skipping that grind conveniently in the cash shop with a low % chance for drop rate just being.
See, that's like I say, that's the thing I don't like, because that affects the gameplay in a negative way, where with gacha games, for the most part anyway, getting the stuff you want isn't about progression. You know, pulling the character you want doesn't advance you to skip gameplay. It might make certain gameplay easier if the character that you've pulled potentially is a really good DPS or has elements that will help in this particular endgame content or instance combat. But it won't actually allow you to skip that grind, so to speak. Now, I haven't played every gacha game out there, but I'm talking about, you know, take Wuthering Waves, for example. If you pull Jian, it doesn't allow you to skip a bunch of the content. You literally just pull in a new character that makes the content you're doing more fun and potentially easier. Well, Probably a bit easier with Jian because he is a crayon-eating character. But that doesn't change how the game plays, really. It might change how you play the game, I guess, but it doesn't actually remove grindy content from the game. So that's why I say I don't mind gacha systems in games like that when it's literally just characters that, for the most part, you want them for the waifu meta more than the actual in-game combat meta.
One example, one means of doing that. And that's also if you can even trust Nexon's stated drop rates. Hint, you
It's going to talk about it.
can't, or you shouldn't put full confidence in it, because I'd like to remind you, if you were unaware as well, a mere 6 months ago, Nexon was fined $9 million by the Korean FTC. Why? Well, because after an investigation, it was revealed that Nexon was essentially scamming customers for over a decade. So it's been known for a while by people who play their games that
I think with some of the drops, you actually couldn't get the item that they said you could get, if I remember right. Some of the drop rates were just off, but I think some of them you actually couldn't get. I could be incorrect on that, but it was fucking bullshit.
Nexon has some of like the worst monetization, some of the most anti-consumer monetization practices.
That's the
in
main
the industry.
reason I wouldn't put any money into a Nexon
have been
game.
known for that. It's not unheard of prior to this whole $9 million fine debacle. But this story was on a whole nother level. So the TLDR of the situation is this: Nexon sold in MapleStory what are essentially loot boxes that reward players these powerful stat boosts. So you would purchase and open these items called cubes, and when you opened it, you would get a random chance and rewarded multiple boosts in power for your character. Well, there was a particular combination of outcomes that most players wanted from these cubes. Basically, it was a really strong boost that pretty much benefited everybody. It's a lot of the reason. It is what fueled a lot of these cube purchases. People.
I never played MapleStory, but it looks fucking trash. Now, it might not be, but it really does. It's almost like you get what you deserve, you know? Nah, it's
wanted
still bad,
this
though.
one particular outcome for a powerful stat boost for their character. It turns out, in their investigation, the Korean FTC learned that for a time, over the course of a decade, that reward that people were essentially gambling on to get, that was never possible. The thing that many people wanted...
It was actually, you couldn't get it. That is so fucking wild. You know, that's not an accidental issue with the drop rate percentage. That is so fucked. That's why I said I would never put money into a Nexon game when I first started playing this, because fuck that. Like, I just don't trust that. I would imagine now that you probably can trust the rates because they got caught, so they probably won't do it again. But I think it's just enough reason for me to be like, nah, not going to do that.
That most powerful outcome of these cubes could never be obtained. You could buy 1 billion cubes, and within this window of time, the probability of getting it was goose egg, actually 0. That is crazy,
shady.
and that is exactly why they got fined $9 million.
When you think about it, though, super smart as well. You know, why encourage the customer to spend more money because the chances of them getting something's very low? Why not just fucking scam the customer? You know, best way to get as much money as possible, man. Fuck
$1 million,
me.
or the equivalent of $9 million, because this was in Korea. Also, if you're curious, none of that money went back to the customers, by the way. Wow, what a surprise. And you know, hey, it's a free-to-play game.
It's as if these regulators are not there for the consumer, you know? It's weird, that, isn't it?
To make money somehow. Of course, I'm not saying they shouldn't be charging money for anything in this game, right? I don't expect games to just be free. In fact, my dream world is that free-to-play model vanishes and we go back to box prices and we get rid of all this other garbage that's been pulled from the game, stripped from the games, these games being made worse for them.
I agree to a point, but I'm totally fine with games being free to play if they don't do that. And I know HoYo they're not the good guys in a lot of situations, but to me, games like Wuthering Waves, Honkai Star Rail, and Genshin show that you can get a game that has a lot of freaking content and is quite complete, and it's free to play, and there's a monetary system that's predatory, no doubt, but really doesn't remove from what you get in terms of the game as a whole. It might make things easier, and certain endgame stuff might be a real struggle without certain things. But if you do put enough time in to do all that sort of stuff, you can still get lucky and get the stuff you need. You're less likely if you're not obviously paying for wishes and polls and such. But I think they're examples of it can be done good. You look at Valorant, look at CSGO, Valorant, free to play, got crazy expensive cosmetics, but you've still got an amazing, fully fledged top tier game that's free. So like, I don't necessarily want to see free to play go away. I just want to see more of the good guys doing better, so we get more of that, because not everybody can afford box price on games. And I understand, you know, if you can't afford games, I guess that's the least of your problems. But at the same time, you know, gaming is an expensive hobby, and more free-to-play games do make it more accessible for more people. It's just that how it's dealt with, isn't it?
Them to sell us the solution. That would be my dream. That dream ain't ever happening because I'm not delusional. I understand we're not going back to that. I also understand lowering the barrier to entry and free to play. It is a boon for a lot of people, and it brings a lot more players to the game, and it maybe certainly has more people playing the game than would otherwise, whatever the reason, right? A free to play game means more access for more people for the game, and that is a good thing.
Look at Valorant. Perfect example. Valorant was charged. Would be nowhere near as big as what it is.
But I will say, there are ways of doing free-to-play monetization and not having it feel like you're making the base game demonstrably worse to try to shove me into the cash shop. And as I said, it's really like, to me, it seems like they took the base structure, they took the idea of how Warframe monetizes their game, and they just said, how can we make this even worse and make more money?
Fuck it, boys. We're going balls deep.
Money off these people. Couple that with Nexon just being fresh off of getting the largest fine that the Korean FTC has ever given out in their whole history because they were scamming customers out of money, basically. That leaves my trust in the company doing the right thing, being consumer friendly in any of their decisions and how they're designing and monetizing this game, and tying the design of the game and the grind of the game into the monetization. My trust of them doing that by the books, it ain't very high. It was only 6 months ago they got fined $9 million. Not super confident that they're doing fine by us, right? And that they've got our best interest in mind. Not that any games company does, right? But look.
I'll just say they're here to make money at the end of the day. It's how they go about it though, isn't it? You know?
With all of that said, I have no doubt that there are people enjoying this game right now, and they will be in the future. It's just not me. Like, for all the things that I do like about the game, and that was a long list. That was probably like a third of what this whole video's runtime is going to be. I do like things about this, but I dislike just enough that right now I've got zero motivation to keep playing. And that's not what I was hoping for this week. I know people say, oh, you're just a rage baiter YouTuber. You're just being contrary. You're just trying to be negative. You're just trying to hate. Look at my channel. I tell you,
I was going to say, I've never got that from Force. People who are saying that to Force are just fucking idiots. I've never felt that from any of his content. He's usually as unbiased as he can be. He usually gives good points. He gives games time. I think he's more than balanced when it comes to his viewpoints on games. I think his viewpoints have been perfectly balanced with this as well. Totally. I agree. I am very, very easy when it comes to monetization, especially on free to play games. Like I say, I'm kind of loose and fast with it, as long as it doesn't affect the actual gameplay. If it removes from that, then that's when it's a problem. Where a lot of people are just, you know, they go hard on anyway. Like, if there's too much monetization, there's a problem. I really don't mind. There can be as much monetization as they want, as long as it's not impacting the game and it's not taken away from the game. That's where, like, so many devs fuck up in that regard. You know, they strip things away just to give it you back to pay for it. That doesn't work with me. Give me a good product and then let me buy some fancy little things to stick on top of it. You know, let me stick a little cherry on top of it. I'll pay a little bit extra for that. But if you're going to make me fucking pay for all the rest of the ingredients, it's like, that then.
I love and want nothing more than to just be gushing about games. And as I mentioned, I love this genre. There are a lot of what I would consider, or what people probably consider bad games. Games like Outriders, games like Defiance, games like Firefall. Maybe a lot of you haven't even heard of those games, right? But I enjoyed them. And I was kind of hoping that this was going to...
Even though Outriders flopped, and it did kind of get... I don't say boring, but it did start to lack fun. I suppose that's getting boring quite quick. I actually did have some fun in Outriders. It had a pretty poor story and poor pacing, and the quests were kind of samey, but I did kind of have fun at the start of that game as well. But yeah, that game flopped hard.
Gonna be it. Despite the Nexon tie-in, I was hoping that this game was gonna do it, but it just really hasn't. It really hasn't. I felt bored after just a couple of days. I felt that way after a couple of days in the beta, and then the second beta test that I played, and now at launch, it's the same thing. And really, ultimately, I think that problem boils down to the poor pacing of the quest design and the game's world, and that's all beyond the microtransaction discussion. Honestly, the game just feels like a worse version of Warframe, Division, or Destiny. Like a lot of games developed by Nexon, it's not the worst out there, but it's also far from the best.
What I think with Nexon, they just seem to make mid, you know, kind of almost soulless, kind of mid stuff. You know, stuff that you can be critical of, but you can't actually say, that's just trash. But at the same time, it's hard to really say that it's good. It's all just very generic, samey, kind of boring, soulless content, really. A little bit like Ubisoft, in my opinion. Ubisoft makes those sort of games. There's like a lot of very samey, kind of off the production line kind of games, where it's almost like they're looking around. Oh, that sounds like a good idea, but they're doing it 3 years too late, 4 years too late, 5 years too late, and not as good as what somebody else did it.
Oftentimes what they do is they'll make games that are just good enough to get people in the door, get them hooked on some sort of progression loop, and then do everything in their power to get them swiping. But hey, I get it. It's a free game. If you want to check it out, by all means. If you like grinding games, this is one that you can play and you can grind, and I'm all for that. I play grind. I play ARPGs. I play MMOs. I like this genre generally, except for this one. So I get it. And there's something to there being a new thing for people to check out, and that in itself can be valuable to people. But I'll also say there are better grinding games that you could play, and that I think would be just it would be time better spent. I'm going to keep my eye on this one, right? This one could get better, and I get why people like it, but right now, nah, it's not for me. I spent more than enough of my time with this game already. I am all done, but by all means, feel free to enjoy it. That is all for today. Thank you as always for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys next time.
Lots of fair points made. Should check out Force Gaming, guys. Does a bunch of good videos. I actually like his content. Yeah, I can't disagree with a lot of what he said, especially about the world, it being quite generic. I've said some of my negatives about the game before. I actually do like the game, what I played. I've not played much of it though, and I can definitely see the more I play of it, I can start to feel the same way in regards to the gameplay loop. That's for sure. It's one thing when games are quite repetitive. At the start, it's fine, isn't it? It's later on that it obviously becomes a problem, but it's knowing whether that's going to be a thing. And I'm quite quick to know that in games. I'm like, right, I'm probably going to enjoy this for probably another 5 to 10 more hours. And that's fine. And that's the good thing sometimes about free-to-play games. If you play it for 10, 15 hours, whatever, you know, I kind of know I'm probably going to get there. And so far, I've been having fun with it. We are going to play more of it. But yeah, I can't disagree with a lot of what he said there. Big agree. Monetization systems in free-to-play games can be done right. And they can be done really badly as well. And definitely adding in grind and allowing you to bypass it for money isn't a good way to do it. Isn't a good way to do it at all. You can make money in a free-to-play game and even be predatory, but, you know, don't remove the fun and the enjoyment of the game to get there. That's where I'll get to. I know a lot of people really get pissy about predatory systems in games, and that's totally fair, especially when you've got a lot of young people who might be playing them, and even people with addictive tendencies. Totally fair to say that, but I don't necessarily mind that, as long as it doesn't interfere with the actual game, which it seems like it does with this. But yeah, we need to talk about the first Descendant from Force Gaming. Check him out, show him some love.